guys suck.
Yeah,
I,
I started to stream again.
so my headset here, if I double tap it, hangs up the call that I'm
No,
on.
the problem is that the problem is that your mic your audio is coming in through my microphone because I haven't been able to figure out how
Oh,
to
really?
route I
Oh,
haven't been able
weird.
to figure out how to route the FaceTime through OBS.
Gotcha.
So
We'll
that
figure that out for next
yeah,
time.
so I have to figure it out for next time. So sorry, I had to stop the stream for a second because I didn't want all my contacts on FaceTime to go out into the world.
The hell are we talking
So we
about?
were talking about we were talking about the world scaling up with the
Yeah.
players or
Oh, that
adapting to
very
the
very
players.
often you end up fighting guys that are less powerful, and you should. And it might. I like doing that. I like it when it's interesting. Like you don't want to just have four guys show up with no purpose at all. But when you have a bunch of vegapygmies that are going to sacrifice a grung, they have to make choices. Why are they doing that? Maybe it's for a good reason, or do we want to save the grung, or do we not care about the grung, or what's going on here, and then they get a bunch of choices, even though like one fireball takes out nearly all of the vegapygmies. Um,
Those,
so
those guys came in from the ship in the Berry Peaks. The
yeah, right,
yeah
right. They came from the rust mold,
yeah
right? Yeah. Yeah. So I think we worry too much about like, well, things are going to be too hard, but I think also as DMs we probably do worry about like, oh, this encounter is going to be too easy. Is it even worthwhile? Like should I bother to have an encounter with
but that's
eight goblins?
like I think the Cholt the Cholt adventure is a great example of the world not scaling with the players because
Right.
the hex crawl in and of itself is so hit and miss with what the challenges can be. I mean, you could bump into a red dragon in this adventure at first level, second level, third level. They have a red dragon here. They have
Right.
the, I mean, there's certain parts of the adventure that you're like, whoa, if my players stumble here at this low level,
Hmm.
they're screwed.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah, I've had it where they definitely have pulled some random encounters and they were low level. They weren't hard, but they learned something. This is
Yeah.
where I think having some information that just about any group can broadcast to them means that encounters with even low level guys will be interesting because they'll learn something.
There's
They'll gain something.
one of the random encounters was the the beach hag. Right, there was a hag
Hmm.
out on the beach. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I never saw that one.
Oof.
Is that hard?
Yeah. One of my
I had them.
players.
I had them. So the true character death, the first character death we had was a sea hag that fought them on
That's what
their
I'm
boat
talking about.
when
The
they were.
sea hag. There's a sea hag hiding
Is
on a
there a
boat.
sea hag in here? I made it
I
up.
think it's hiding on a boat or something like that. And the
Oh,
shore.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a sea hag that ripped the guy's heart right out of his chest, killed the character outright, and that was the one where they then had to do a crazy ceremony that nearly killed everyone on the boat, um, but then succeeded with their check and ended up escalating the death curse. So that was fun. So good times.
So how do we wrap up this
I think we've got a
chat?
lot of good ideas. I'm gonna write an article up about this. I think it's interesting enough to write some words down about it. And I think like the idea of making sure that there are options, even in a situation where you're facing the insurmountable enemy, that you still have options in front of you. That the DM might have to manipulate the situation a little bit, which I don't like doing, but if we have to manipulate the situation so that the characters have agency in a particular situation, I think that can make for a stronger one, even if you're facing something you shouldn't fight, right? Like,
I think like everything else too, the story has to dictate what
yeah,
and
but
making sure that you're giving the players a making sure that you're giving the players some kind of victory or
right,
some kind of success. Whether
yeah,
it doesn't have to
the
be,
options for
yeah,
success,
it
yeah,
doesn't have to be a fight success. It could be a
right,
information or an item or something.
yeah, yeah, a
You know,
secret, right? They
a
have a secret
secret.
that the people they're fighting don't know,
I mean, she may know things that she may know something about the tomb that your players need to know,
yeah, or
and
they might know
or
something
they
about the
may
tomb
know
that she
something that
doesn't
she
know,
needs.
right, right,
You know, I think we got to get away from the idea that everything has to be a fight.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, that's a big yeah. This. That's why I think this topic's interesting because it's sort of like a 201 301 class thing. It's like 101 is moving to a story based approach, right? And sort of making that decision that the world doesn't conform to the characters and that we don't. I mean, for me anyway, major change for me has been I don't set combat encounters ahead of time. They happen, and I'll run them, but I don't know that there's going to be a combat encounter,
No.
right? They just happen.
I
That to me is like the low level, and then the second level is okay. What happens when that starts to break down? Right when you follow that approach, but it sort of leads to an approach where now the characters are facing a lich and they don't have anything, and then you're like, oh, now I've got to manipulate the story a little.
Talk
bit.
your way out of it.
Yeah, right. Now I got to manipulate the story so that they do have this level of agency. So I think that's yeah, it's sort of I think it's a powerful idea.
The
That I need to
idea, I
investigate
mean,
more.
the idea that's so ingrained in our minds from so many years of
Yeah,
D&D, and I think one of the advantages that new players have is that they don't bring all this baggage with them
right.
when they get into 5e, which is a little bit different philosophically, is that everything has to end in a fight, and we're going to fight everything we see, and everyone's
Yeah.
there to be killed and take their stuff. I think we
Yeah.
got to throw all that out the window.
Yeah, and that idea that like I'm gonna run a game tomorrow and I'm gonna start with a role play scene and then there'll be a combat scene and then there'll be an exploration scene and then a small combat scene and then a boss fight. It's like
Yeah.
get it with all that.
Ah, and at the time we thought
Yeah,
man,
that was powerful. Right?
no, but remember the book Dungeon Delve in 4e? At the time we thought it was a great book. This is a great
Yeah.
book. It's so cool. All
Yeah.
these adventures ready to go. And I look at that book now. I'm like, man, this is just a string of fights, one fight after the other. This is boring.
Three fights, right? 3 rooms.
Yeah,
fights.
3 rooms, 3 fights, and there's not much
Yeah.
more to do here. Like that wouldn't fly
But,
today.
Yeah, that was definitely a book. And it's funny. I bought that book. I bought the PDF of that book recently. Mike Merles was talking about how that was one of his favorite books of the time. That it was this really useful thing, and I was like, huh. That's really interesting. And I said I should look back at that because I started writing an article about like, well, do we have that version? Do we have something like the Dungeon Delve now? And it's like, well, we have Eldritch Lairs and we have the Book of Lairs that you and I both worked on for Kobold Press, and there's other such things. And then I looked at it like this is terrible. Like
I think the question you should ask is, do we want a book like this now? And I probably not, because even Book of Layers isn't really. Dungeon Delve was like really railroady.
Yeah, but these new ones, right? We would not make anything like that anymore because the game isn't like that anymore. Having these sort of small dungeon approaches towards layers, but there's lots of things you can do and lots of exploration, and if you alert everybody, they're all coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really, it's very interesting to see how that.
But I think my biggest takeaway from this conversation was the idea that a lot of player agency, or tied to, maybe not a lot of player, but something definitely tied to player agency is how you as a DM, how much information you provide and how clear you are and how much you could telegraph to people to put everything in context as much as you can, and be as clear as you can be with information, so that then you could say, I gave you every bit of information I could have and you still chose to do this or that, and
and like you mentioned, just like we have are breaking away from our heavy focus on combat, our players also have to get that change, and they might not be as fast at it as we are. So we have to overweight our telegraphing of the non-combat options.
I actually, and this is funny, I'm running a Shadow of the Demon Lord game now, online. I'm streaming that. I love the game. I love the whole setting. I love everything about it. But it's a hard game and it doesn't pull punches, right? So my players were in at the end of the adventure. They call them stories. At the end of the story, where they're going to fight a boss, right?
Right.
The boss kept saying, "Leave." Leave. Like
the boss is telegraphing.
Like the boss is saying, I don't want to kill you. You guys can. I don't have any beef with you guys. Leave.
Right.
He said that like 3 times. Leave. And they're like, no, we're gonna fight this thing. I said, all right.
All right. And then they TPK.
TPK.
Yeah. So I never heard the story of how they got TPK. I haven't watched it yet.
They didn't leave.
Yeah. But I noticed your relative glee. So I was like, huh.
Well, they weren't prepared for it. They chose to go in there, and they chose to, I gave them clues.
Right.
I set up, this thing has been killing people in the city. This thing is powerful. They didn't even bother looking for a healing potion. They just, I'm going to go in there and see what's up. All right.
Right.
Even the guy said, leave, twice. Leave.
Yeah, this has been a really useful conversation.
So, Yeah, I think so too. So, well,
Yeah.
as always, Mike, I want to thank you for joining me
Of course.
uh,
Let's do it again.
for these. Absolutely, I have my little name banner set up. I don't. You got to be proud of me. I got my
Oh, look
little.
at that.
Look at that.
Yep.
Uh,
That's awesome. Pro.
like if I worked
Professional.
in like if I knew how to work television or something like that, right?
Very good.
No, we should definitely catch up.
Look
We
what
should.
just showed up for me. I get
What is
a
that?
cupcake.
What is that? A
I'm on
cupcake?
Twitch.
I've
Yeah.
I haven't had a cupcake in 6 months.
Oh, good for you.
I haven't had a slice of pizza in about 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, I think I went for 2 years without pizza, but I probably
Yeah,
had a cupcake in that time.
I'm on a weight loss. I'm on a weight loss thing that's got me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Well, it's been a great pleasure.
listen, we're gonna do this again. We're gonna come up with
Yes.
topics. I'm gonna have people send us ideas for conversations.
Cool.
Because I think talking to you is always fun, and I
Yeah.
need to get I launched a YouTube channel where this is gonna live on, and I
Great.
launched this Twitch stream that where people are watching us right now. But do you have a YouTube, right?
I do. So I run a show. I'll be running one tomorrow morning about 10ish a.m. Where I prepare for my D&D game for Sunday. I run a game every Sunday afternoon. So Sunday morning I'll go on and spend an hour talking about the Way of the Lazy Dungeon Master and using that approach towards preparing for my game. And that's also all the archive of that is available up on YouTube as well.
Cool. All right. All right, Mike, and I want to thank the people in the chat. There's a few
Yeah,
few
thank
people
you
joined
all.
us, and
Good
it was a
conversations.
great conversation, and hopefully we could keep the comments going. Maybe on YouTube people can leave comments and leave their ideas about the stuff we talked about, and we could pull from there, and we can keep the conversation going, and we'll come up with something else for another show sometime. All right.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.